Welcome to Creating Interactive Enrichment Modules to Support Students. This presentation is to support gifted students, but certainly is great teaching for all students and essential for gifted students. So let's get started. Hello. My name is Brittany Smith Moczygemba, and I am a gifted and talented implementation specialist in SAISD. That's San Antonio Independent School District, and I work with gifted and talented visual arts students in the LAVA program. The LAVA program is an innovative gifted and talented program in SAISD. We identify and served gifted students in the areas of leadership or visual arts. Our program started out 3 years ago in 5 IB campuses, and we have expanded with our students since then. I would like to take a moment to share with you my story as we get started on our adventure today with virtual modules. And so my story is that I'm a lifelong artist, scientist, and adventurer, and I graduated from the University of the Incarnate Word, and I've been working in SAC for the past 14 years. During this time, I was a kindergarten teacher, 3rd grade teacher, 5th grade teacher, and then a K-8 art teacher before moving over to the gifted and talented department, which explains my chameleon up there. During this time, I earned my master's in curriculum instruction with an emphasis in science. And I often identify myself as a chameleon. I love to explore many interests, and I cannot live without color. I tend to also collect critters for my classroom, and they inevitably end up in my home for the summer and virtual learning. So that's just a little bit about me. I've got a wonderful husband, 2 girls, and 2 dogs. We are actually virtual instructing today. My children are virtual, and we are virtual for gifted and talented. And so thank you so much for all of you that teach virtual and hybrid. We could not do it without you. It is certainly exciting and at times very, very strange. And so hopefully the presentation today will help give you another tool to use in your virtual toolbox. So let's get started. For our meeting norms, they are to be present, be participating, and be thoughtful. Today we will be working with a couple different Google Workspace options, and please keep your mic muted. Raise your hand if you have a question, thought, or idea. And don't forget, you can also add your ideas over here in the discussion forum. So today, we have a very heavy agenda. We're going to explore virtual tools through Google Workspace. We're going to discuss differentiation for gifted learners. We're going to discover components of virtual modules and virtual escape rooms and create a virtual module or escape room using the Google Workspace. Now, this is a lot to cover in 50 minutes. There may be times that we're going to have to work through the presentation a little faster, and you may not have as much explore and create time as originally intended. Luckily, there are how-to videos embedded in this presentation, and you'll have the link to that. During our time together, I will also post some links that you can look through at your own pace. At the end of the session, there will be a very quick survey for you to fill out. I am grant funded through a JAVITS grant that our district received 3 years ago, and part of our grant is to see how many people we were able to discuss gifted and talented and alternative gifted areas and how to enhance student learning. So if you don't mind at the end taking a very quick survey, I'd appreciate it. So today our essential question that we are going to work together is, how do I utilize digital tools to differentiate instruction? Or even how to flip pedagogy using digital tools. So first I'd like to ask you, how has virtual teaching or hybrid teaching affected your engagement strategies? How do you engage students in the virtual world? How has that changed so far? Is there anything going well or that you're struggling with? If you could put it in the discussion forum and share some ideas. Very shy audience today. Blog entries. Oh, I like those. Forum discussions, online discussions, live Zoom sessions, and other virtual tools. A large variation in students' acceptance of remote learning. I agree with that 100%. At the beginning of this virtual experience a year ago now in March, that has greatly evolved from March until now, and kind of what we're doing with the students and how we're trying to hook those students. Thank you for sharing. So the first thing I want to start off with is what flipped pedagogy is and kind of is not. So how many of y'all have used flipped pedagogy in the classroom? Flipped pedagogy centers around the timing of direct instruction and hands-on application. In flipped pedagogy, the students use studies the content at their own pace and then consults with the instructor for practice or hands-on application. Flipped classrooms are similar to flipped pedagogy. Some people use the terms together, but they're a little bit different. Flipped classrooms are structured so that students watch instructional videos at home and come to class to complete the practice problems which were previously assigned as homework. Flipped learning is when we kind of put those two together, flipped classroom, flipped pedagogy. Flipped learning occurs when a student applies what they studied individually to a group discussion or setting. And flipped pedagogy has been around since the early 2000s, but it's definitely never been more relevant than during our current virtual and hybrid classroom situation. There are many digital tools, programs, and more to assist in creating flipped pedagogy. Although this can seem overwhelming and time-consuming, it's important to note that an entire course does not have to be flipped. Starting with a lesson or topic that you're comfortable with and knowledgeable about is a great way to begin exploring the process of flipped pedagogy. Today, we're going to be exploring some of the virtual tools to help you create flipped lessons or activities. And can we put the link for the presentation in the chat? The video right there, you can actually watch during your free time. It kind of gives a little bit more information about flipped pedagogy if you are seeking more information on that. So today, we're going to talk specifically about virtual tools for flipped instruction. So virtual tools can be used to increase student during virtual, hybrid, and even face-to-face instruction. Virtual tools can fulfill a variety of instructional needs, such as increasing student engagement, serving as a vehicle to deliver curriculum, to differentiate for a variety of student abilities, and to assess for student comprehension. Although there is a variety of virtual tools at our disposal, common barriers to utilizing virtual tools is usually like cost of pre-made programs and tools, or the amount of time that it takes to create these virtual pieces, and the confusion around the ties to the curriculum, maybe even a little bit of fear. Common Sense Media has a list of virtual tools by type and price. And once you get the link for the presentation, you can actually explore the best tools for virtual learning according to Common Sense Media. Your district may or may not have purchased some of these. There's certainly some great pre-made ones. There's ones you can make yourself. All of them are great, but how do we use them in the classroom? That's kind of where we're going with that today. Today, we're going to specifically, what virtual tools are you familiar with? You'll put that in the chat, what virtual tools you are familiar with. And as you do that, I'm going to put the link to this presentation in the chat. Link. Whee. So I see a couple of them have been shared, and please let me know if that link works or not. It should, but if for some reason it doesn't, please let me know. So as far as virtual tools, it sounds like we're used to using some different, hello? Sounds like we're used to using a couple different learning management systems that may include Canvas, Blackboard, Schoology, Google Classroom. Looks like discussions and collaboration. Definitely, there are some virtual tools for discussions and collaboration, and Play Pose It is awesome. So along with those purchased or free activities that you like to use. There are many programs that we can use, like Breakout EDU, Nearpod, Seesaw as well, that can be utilized to create interactive virtual methods of instruction. However, many of the same tasks can be created using Google Workspace. The shareability and embeddability of Google Workspace eliminates the need for costly programs that are not always universal across multiple learning management systems. In my particular district, we switched from using Google Classroom at the beginning of our virtual instruction to Canvas learning management system. That was a huge learning curve for us as a district. And what we found was that Google could still be embedded in a lot of our Canvas activities, which really helped us out a lot. Today, we're going to be exploring Google Slides, Google Drawing, and Google Forms to create virtual tools for instruction. So specifically what I'd like to talk with you today is a virtual module. And I'm going to be using the term virtual module a lot. And the reason why I would like to talk with you about virtual modules is because I actually work with gifted and talented visual arts students primarily. And my students are visual spatial learners who have creative brains and think differently. On any given day, gifted and talented students can struggle in some way with engaging in the curriculum. With the pandemic, that has shifted our instructional practice much more than anyone could have even expected. One thing the pandemic taught me was to approach instruction from a different perspective. I really explored this idea as I struggled to engage students in online learning, especially for gifted services. All of my students right now, whether they are on campus or a hybrid 2 days a week on and off campus or virtual, I'm actually giving our gifted services through the virtual setting because they do not want us to travel between campuses and potentially be a super spreader. However, I'm finding that although I could engage students easily face-to-face in discussion and activities, getting students to log on to virtual coursework was a challenge. There were topics I would want to introduce to my students, but I found that students were disengaged or weren't logging in or just I wasn't hearing from them. So one way I decided to work around this was to package my content in a virtual world game or challenge so that it didn't look like school. This way, the students were exploring a virtual world or a virtual module, but it really was the curriculum content that I wanted them to explore already. Genius, virtual modules. So the components of a virtual module include a location, which is a place for your module to be hosted. It includes a topic or content for the students to explore, and some kind of performance task or assessment. Now, if you have the link for the presentation, which I put in the chat, you can take a minute to explore on your own. But in the interest of time, I'm going to also walk you through. This was something that we used with our students this past summer. Usually we have a face-to-face summer camp for our gifted students. It's a great time. We take them on field trips and we draw outside and we explore, but hashtag COVID. So instead, we decided to take that field trip virtually. And this is a small sample and I'm in San Antonio, Texas. So this is a picture of downtown San Antonio. And this was our virtual visual arts summer camp that the students explored asynchronously. They checked in with us once a day and we created something together or shared something that we created. And at the end, we actually had a virtual showcase of their work. And so this was all created through Google Slides. And we embedded videos, told them to get on the virtual bus. We did have it translated in Spanish because our student population in my district, majority of them are bilingual, with Spanish being the dominant language for our bilingual students. And so we wanted to make sure that our students had access to it, even though myself, I was speaking in English. And so the students actually had 3 pathways that they could choose from. For the purpose of this presentation, I just took it down to one, which was the creativity pathway. This is a downtown sketch of San Antonio, Texas, with some familiar things the students would usually see. A lot of my students are actually based downtown. I am in an urban Title I school district, and so they are very familiar with many of these places. They got a chance to go on the creativity pathway. This is our Hemisphere Park that was redone a couple years ago, and they were able to choose different activities. And they could choose to, right here, the link is not live. I had to take it out for security reasons, this being not my district. They were able to post Flipgrid videos of their process as they were creating it. They could explore how-to videos, some different links for artists that I would like them to kind of see. A lot of times our students are looking at art a lot on the internet, but it is not always quality, or a lot of it is the same style. They tend to get narrowly focused on one style and pursue that focus, which is the nature of gifted students, pursue it with a very narrow focus. But I was trying to also get them out of their comfort zone, get them to explore some different things as well. We also looked at ideas. We used places like the Getty Museum, which had some online challenges already for them to get engaged in. throw in some TED Talks, but this gave them a chance to explore. We had some students that came to the Zooms and some that didn't, but they all had the opportunity to share their artwork through this virtual module and kind of go at their own pace. They also had a curating voices pathway, which looked at creating your own gallery and looking at other museums from around the world. And the technique pathway focused on very basic, like drawing foundational skills, proportions, and things like that for the face. That was our virtual summer camp for our students. But again, did you see any of those components? The location? What was the content? Were there any performance tasks? Let's break it down a little bit further. So your first component is your location. This sets the stage for learning. Why? This hooks or engages the students and uses one or multiple Google Slides. Have any of y'all heard of Bitmoji classrooms? That's all the rage right now, having a Bitmoji classroom. It is very embeddable. I myself have several Bitmoji classrooms that I've embedded on different pages of my Canvas learning management system. And the nice part about building them through Google versus building them in Canvas was, as I wanted to switch out the links, I did not have to create a new embed code. I am now quite proficient at embed codes. If anybody is using Canvas, you will understand that embed codes are fun. But as we're going through this, because of our interest of time, there is a how-to appendix that I've created that I'm going to throw in the chat really fast as well. And what this is, it's going to actually give you how-to videos on how to make all this stuff. I also sometimes I find if I've gone to a conference, I need time to digest and then explore again. This gives you the opportunity to explore at your own pace. So your location could be something that's one slide that you've embedded lots of different links in, or it could be something that is multiple link slides. But there's a fine line between a Google slide presentation and then a virtual world. We'll get to that. Actually, let me ask you that question. Why would someone want to spend time creating a Bitmoji classroom? What impact would it have on student engagement and comprehension? What do y'all think? Still processing and digesting. That's okay. So as you're processing and thinking, I'm going to move on to the next component, which is the topic. The topic introduces the content. It is your what the students will learn. You can embed content links, documents, and more. We actually used even the virtual modules to host our parent nights and have the parents be able to explore different topics about gifted nature and needs, just like we would have our students. So once you have created your location, you're ready to fill your location with your content. The topic of your module will include the content you'd like your students to learn, as well as any information that they will need in order to help with that instruction. And again, content topics can be presented through interactive virtual worlds for the students to explore. And you would create these in Google Slides and then publish it. By using a published Google Slide, students can easily navigate through it and still feel like they're in their world. And since it's published, anything that you change or tweak, even after it's published, will be updated through that link, which is really helpful. Again, if you're using different learning management systems, that you don't have to go back and change out the link or change out your button. It's a published slide. It'll automatically update. This is our creativity island that the students can explore. Very simple. Engage through tech and creativity. Build meaning and comprehension digitally. Thank you. Awesome. Definitely having a virtual world can engage the students through tech and creativity. My 6-year-old, especially, my 9-year-old, I can kind of trick into doing work. My 6-year-old, if it's not techie, she's not interested. And so I see it even as a parent that when my children's teachers have something that's looking more like technology and not so much like the workbook that they have to finish and then take a picture of, she gets really excited, and it's way less fighting than trying to get her to sit down, do the textbook, and take a picture of it. some of the example topics that we've used for our Bitmoji classrooms and for our virtual modules. We've used them to take the students on virtual field trips. We've used them as a content topic. Right now, the students are working on Compose, and they're working on a module on equity. And so we actually built these modules back in August, and they're feeling even more relevant now as we're looking at equity and access for our students with instruction that are virtual, hybrid, or face-to-face. We'll also use these for a content library or as a classroom homepage for family nights. Lots of application. So once you've created your location and you've added your content, the last thing you need is a performance task, which is there to measure the student mastery. It's interactive. There are usually 3 types of differentiation within performance tasks. That can be differentiation of the content. The students go to different modules based on their abilities and needs. You can differentiate the process, how the students are interacting, what they're turning in, and the product that they are turning in. The product differentiation is usually the most common one. That can look like a choice board or a menu that students pick in order to turn in an artifact. Performance tasks are the most common differentiation of the virtual classroom module. They can be as simple as a Google drawing, which we actually have one here. That's the one with the mouse. They can be even more complicated as a virtual escape room, and that's the one in the back, which we'll be looking at today using Google Forms. They can be a photo that they've taken of their work and uploaded. No matter what the performance task format you're using, you can support many different learning styles in your classroom by differentiating the performance task. So let's look at these performance tasks a little bit deeper. We're going to look at nonverbal tasks such as Google Drawing. We're going to look at virtual escape rooms using Google Forms. And one that's commonly used is reflection videos using Flipgrid or Canvas Studio or even iMovie and trailers. All of those are a great way for the student to show how they've interacted with the content and what they've absorbed and what they're able to tell you back. So really fast, let's go over Google Drawings, which are nonverbal performance tasks, especially essential for your visual spatial learners. And spatial ability is the capacity to understand and remember the spatial relations among objects. Many gifted students sitting in our classrooms have high spatial ability. Some students are well balanced in verbal and spatial abilities, while others may be stronger in visual abilities than verbal. This also adjusts for age. Our younger students are more visual first, and then the auditory comes along later, or they kind of stick with that visual spatial ability as their dominant preferred method of learning. So if you're thinking about the fact that some of your students may be visual spatial, some of them may be audio learners, which is my husband. He'd rather sit there with his hat down and his arms crossed, and he somehow takes in all the information, even though it looks like he's asleep, and he gets an A on the test. Did that all through college. And some of our students have both. But what is the impact on the classroom and learning? Our classrooms are primarily auditory verbal environments, especially now that we're virtual. Log into your Zoom, here's the instructions, take in the information I'm sending you, do some kind of task and turn it in. A lot of that is very auditory. However, over 51% of the population identifies as visual learners, including most teachers. So what strategies can we use? Nonverbal tasks such as Google Drawing allow for students to share their knowledge using creative critical thinking, not just words. Again, this goes back to our product differentiation. Consider the characteristics of visual spatial learners in the list above. They are students that learn holistically rather than a step-by-step. I'm the person that I listen to the steps, but you need to show me what the end thing is and then work backwards. If you just give me the step 1, step 2, step 3, I kind of tune out. And I know a lot of my middle school students are the same way. And again, they are also processed primarily through pictures using visual imagery. It's not that everything has to be in pictures, but having an image even next to the instruction helps clue them in, pay attention. This is something important. Myself, I tend to picture the image and then I remember the words later. Ideas are interconnected like a web. This relates to this, relates to this, relates to this, relates to this, and then they're all together. So if you're considering some of the knowledge that our students have and their different learning styles, and the many times the visual spatial students have a strength in one area, sometimes they also struggle in another. Research actually shows that a high number of dyslexia students are visual spatial learners. That makes sense because they have an area that's a deficit, but their brain has been able to compensate by using another area, visual spatial learners. We, again, for the interest of time, usually we would be working through, if you have the link for the presentation, click on the link, but I will show you also if we're just looking through it. The Google Drawing activity is how to, it's going to ask you to make a copy. Make a copy. How are you going to get the mouse from here to his home? Very simple application. This is Google Drawings. It is free. It saves automatically in your Google Drive. You can save this as a JPEG, PDF, PNG, and insert it into a Word doc, a presentation, add it to Canvas. Lots of different applications. It's very simple. How do we get the mouse from here to his family? Now, you could put obstacles in the way. You could put a story with it. For the purposes of this, I just asked for a simple machine to get the mouse to his house. How would you do it? And I'm thinking about 4th grade, 5th grade. You start talking about simple machines and fulcrums and the wheel and the rope. How are we going to get the mouse? And it looks from here like the mouse is below his family. So clearly he's got to move up somehow. How would you get it to move? And if you want to play around, try it out. I will recommend, if you click online, use the squiggle tool. It is the easiest tool. I have a student who's really good at importing images from the internet. So he will actually insert images from the web into here and he puts them all together collage style. It's very efficient at communicating that way. I also have a student who's autistic and off the charts, visual spatial gifted artist. And he loves stuff like this because he can explain it to me orally as he's doing it. He's really funny. Draws some very scary, nightmarish looking things though. So as you're working on that, here's an example. For me, I was thinking, okay, there's got to be a cat because every children's book always has a cat. I work with 4th through 12th grade students. And so my activities usually have to have a range. I don't Zoom with 4th through 12th grade at the same time. I Zoom with my primary students, and then my secondary middle school, my secondary high school at different times. But in the interest of keeping my own sanity, I try to keep things where I can adjust the ability level with the age range. And so for me, I thought, okay, the mouse is going to create like teeter-totter, and he's going to knock the boot onto the teeter-totter, which is going to propel him over the cat. And in order to do that, he's got to use the air horn to scare the cat to bump into the boot to knock a wee into his house. Now, I could also ask them, what is the fulcrum? How is it used? Da, 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 da. However, this is just, it's visual. I can explain it. I imported some pictures. Now, I probably would have to record my narrative in order for my teacher to understand what I was thinking, which is a great way for them to practice. My own daughter has articulation issues. And so the more opportunities for her to talk, the better. We're also exploring virtual speech. Bless you, all of you who are teaching face-to-face and virtual kids. We love you. Alrighty, so that was Google Drawings. And the next one we're going to talk about is Google Forms. So we have looked at Google Slides. There are some how-to videos on creating a virtual escape room or even a virtual world with linked slides, which we're getting to next. But you need stuff to put into that virtual world. You can put in performance tasks like Google Drawing. You can also create virtual escape rooms. A virtual escape room is a series of puzzles. Any escape room, whether virtual or physical, because we used to do this all the time when we were face-to-face and the kids could touch things and share things, did a very great one where the kids had to figure out the locks because all of the good art supplies were locked in a toolbox. They frowned at me for a whole day, but then they figured it out. It ended up being a great limitations challenge because some of them tried to create art without the good art supplies, and they went back and worked on the locks. But a virtual escape room is a series of puzzles. Any escape room, whether virtual or physical, have the same basic components. But the best way to describe a virtual escape room is to have you try one. So we're actually going to take a break from hearing me talk. I can talk all day, but let's take a break. We're going to get into some breakout rooms over here, and we're going to share the link for this challenge. And you're going to work together in small groups and see if you can bust out of the mat. You may not have time to finish the challenge, and that's okay. Just wanted a chance for you to try a virtual escape room, looking for these components, the narrative, locks, puzzle, celebration, location. You may or may not know what that is yet. That's okay. Try it out first. Can we start our breakout rooms? Hello. Welcome back. That was fast and furious. Did anybody get to break any of the locks? I have noticed if you're posting anything, I seem to have a 2-minute lag. So I'm going to assume you're all saying, yes, it was great, or no, it was awful. But I can't see it yet. So as we're working through the escape room, that was a virtual escape room that is pre-made. There are a lot of escape rooms that have been made using Google Forms, already free and online. One of the ones I really like is Ditch That Textbook. I tend to follow hers a lot. They are for a variety of content and certainly have a variety of formats, but they all have the same components: narrative, blocks, puzzle, celebration, and location. So let's kind of break that down really fast. Then we're going to have a little bit of work time and try to create either a virtual module or a escape room using Google Forms, along with some how-to videos. So we can do in 10 minutes. So the first component is the narrative. That is the story. It is the introduction to the virtual escape room. The narrative is the what or why. What should the student should be doing or try to solve? What is the student learning? Why does the student need to escape? Why does the student need to learn this information? The narrative can be a story or a discussion question. The narrative may lead the students to a creative prompt or challenge them to find an innovative solution. The narrative is your learning objective. It ties back to what you were trying to teach. And again, we can embed these escape rooms into our virtual modules, or we can have them as a standalone assignment. Once you have your narrative, the next part is the lock. The lock is what the student is trying to figure out. It can be a missing word, number, or color combination, or a series of shapes. In a face-to-face setting, traditional locks with numbers, words, or directional lines can be purchased online. That can be purchased through companies like Breakout EDU, which are great. You can also find them on Amazon and Home Depot, of all places. I found those directional locks and word locks at Home Depot as well. In a virtual setting, you must get creative, though, with your locks. Your locks may still be a color, shape, word, or number combination, but the way in which you present the challenge to the student must be innovative. Something has to force them to click on it and get excited. Use your locks to embed vocabulary words you would like your students to learn or use. Make the lock a physics formula or a chemistry equation to solve. Lots of different options for the locks. It's what they're trying to solve. Now, my favorite part is the puzzle. The puzzle are the clues. The puzzle may be a riddle using vocabulary words you would like the students to understand. The puzzle may be a math problem whose answer is the number combination for the lock. The puzzle may be a series of images the students need to put in order to complete the life cycle of something. The puzzle is a creative way to introduce the content to your students. This is the part that's really going to hook your visual spatial learners. The puzzle is the most fun to create. I myself have gone down a rabbit hole many a time creating them, but it also takes the longest to create. Pro tip: creating the puzzle items ahead of time will actually speed up the process of creating your virtual escape room, because all you have to do is plop them into your Google form instead of trying to make it and put it in at the same time. Later in this presentation, we'll explore resources for creating the puzzles and actually how to do this. These are two examples of ones that I've used. One of them I used Vengage, one of them was Google Slides. They had an embedded word they had to put into the lock later on. After the puzzle is the celebration. The celebration is what the student sees when they complete a lock successfully or when they escape the virtual room. The celebration keeps the student engaged and encouraged. Virtual trophies, badges, images, championship belts, all of those can be created with many different virtual tools such as Adobe Spark, Canva, PicCollage, Google Slides. All of them can be used to create the celebration image. Inserting these images between locks, if you have a form that has multiple locks. Yes, definitely part of gamification. Thank you for bringing that up. The students love it when you gamify anything, and giving them a virtual heavyweight belt, they get really excited about it, especially with our need to be contact free as much as possible, even with our face-to-face students. Virtual badges or stickers are a great touch-free way to provide virtual praise for your students. They can be printed out, they can be shared as images. They're very easy. The belt is actually a Google slide, and just put in their name and there you go. Now, again, we go back to location. You have to put these things somewhere. Whatever you create for your virtual escape room, you got to put it either into your own website, into your Canvas page, into a Bitmoji page. There has to be somewhere for them to go to access it. So your location in the digital room is where you put your locks, puzzles, and celebrations. Once you create all the pieces, you need to upload them to a Google Slide, a Google Form, a website, a digital site. Once you have your digital location, you can share the link with your students or embed it on a learning management system like Schoology, Canvas, Blackboard, This is usually the final step in creating the virtual escape room. We also have my coworker. Oh, she's right there. We sent our little Bitmojis to our students so that we could have them with us no matter what. And they actually do a s'more where they embed their escape rooms into the s'more, and they're able to track how many times the s'more has been opened, which is really helpful for them, again, because we are grant funded and trying to track how many students did we impact and how many teachers. So now that we've talked about the components of the virtual escape room, why would we make them? Why spend all this time creating all these fun things? Well, again, we have a problem. Your students in your classroom, whether that's face-to-face, hybrid, or virtual, your students are at a variety of levels. You need to be able to address those levels, which we know how to do. We know how to adjust instruction and activities for various academic skills and gaps that our students may or may not have. But the challenge now is that we may have some students face-to-face, some virtual, and some hybrid. How do you differentiate for students in a variety of settings? Virtual escape rooms. By creating virtual challenges, you can have the ability to reach students no matter their location. In our district, what they would like us to do is anything the face-to-face child has, the virtual child has. So we can't give a paper to a face-to-face child that the virtual student would not have access to as well. So for us, the virtual escape rooms became a handy way to be able for the students to, I teach gifted, so I actually usually do 3 levels, and they can choose to do the beginner, intermediate, or advanced challenge. Up to them. Some of them will choose to do the beginning level. It's way too easy for them. They slap through it really fast. Eventually they get very bored and start trying those intermediate and advanced levels. I also have students that have surprised me that I personally probably would have placed them more on the intermediate or even beginner level. They've challenged the advanced level, including I had a 4th grader try the challenge for face proportions, and he did a really great portrait. And so it allows for the student to be able to choose, which really helps with your gifted students. It's good teaching for all students, but potentially, especially for those gifted students in your classroom, that ability to choose gives them ownership of their education and allows for them to engage a little bit more because they chose that challenge. And sometimes the challenge is too hard, and that does happen, and they get frustrated. But there's a great video called Embrace the Shake by Phil Hansen on TED Talks, and it talks a lot about how embracing those difficulties or limitations or things that you think are, there's also a great book on Why Gifted Kids Fail that talks a lot about the need for letting them fail and kind of struggle through that to build resiliency, especially in our virtual world. Some of our kids are doing really great. Some of our kids are crashing and burning. Some of our kids are in the middle. Some weeks they get behind and some weeks they're doing great. Yay. So having these virtual tools are really helpful. So I'm going to share this link in the chat really fast, and that's going to be a escape room planning guide. The intention was to give you a great 15 minutes to create either a Bitmoji classroom, linked module, or a virtual escape room. However, I said this was a very fast and furious workshop. So I'm going to give you this link, and you are going to be able to kind of work through that. I'm going to show you some other things that are included in this presentation that you now have the link for, and kind of the method to madness. That's the planning guide. So this document right here, there's one for escape rooms and one for modules. And I kind of want to walk you through, since we are running short, I want to honor your time, that you have the links to the presentation. They also should be on the description of the presentation. Within the presentation are how-to videos that will show you how to create these things. There are linked samples that are fill in the blank. So I know sometimes it's really helpful to have a template, and even just for getting through the process of creation. So in here, there are templates for a Bitmoji classroom, templates for a virtual module, and templates for a virtual escape room where you would just plug in your content. It's right there. And I apologize, we went so fast. I just got really excited about kind of the who, what, when, where, why. There's how-to videos on how to do each one of these with a step-by-step they are a little long. They're longer than my 5-minute videos. However, it walks you through kind of the do's and don'ts and things that happen when you're creating. And as we're finishing up with our 1 minute and 30 seconds left, think back to how you can utilize digital tools to differentiate instruction. I apologize we didn't have as much time to actually create them. However, all of the tools are there for you, and I have my email as well and the survey. I would just really appreciate it. Looking for survey. Great. Did not put the survey on there. That's okay because the survey is right here. Whee! I would greatly appreciate it. I do have a grant-funded position, and surveys really help. Survey. When we show that we present at different places and kind of feedback from y'all, it's very quick. And are there any questions? With 40 seconds left. So for the online students and the in-person students, our district's policy is that they are on at the same time. So for example, the third grade classroom that's down the hall from my room, she has 8 kids that are in the class and they're talking, but they're on the Zoom. So for our district's policy and purposes, we do have the face-to-face students and the online students on the Zoom at the same time. And we actually will usually pair them.